So let's say that you've got a startup concept. You have done some market research. You figure it's a big market. You've used the keyword tools and so on and so forth to confirm your intuition. Now, when you actually start thinking about your product, you're going to need to assemble some product tiers. And these are basically, the features and the roadmap for which features you're going to include at what time. Especially with a crowdfunder or a Kickstarter, this is actually quite important. What you should do is, the heuristic price points in this post over there, the blog.bound for anything, click that, take a look, look at these links, Kickstarter product tiers and trends. And that's all great. We want to supplement that with a little bit of theory, and I think the combination could be quite helpful. Basically, if we look at this graphic over here, you can imagine that the ultimate market research is a survey of every single person on Earth, all 7 billion people. And you get some metadata on them, like their job, employer, age, gender, other kinds of variables. And then you ask them how much they would pay maximum for each version of your product, right? So example, over here, this mechanic will pay, $0 for version 1 and 2 for, $10 for version 2 and $10 for version 3. Whereas this CEO over here wants your product so much, they'd pay up to $1,000 for version 1 and $1,500 for version 2 and $2,000 for version 3. And in general, what you're going to find is the vast majority of people will never buy your product at all. It's just going to be 0, 0, 0, 0. They have no need for it. They won't buy it at any price, no matter how low you make it. And you might even go one step further than that. They won't even use it if you make it free, if you have a freemium product. So those people, really don't want it. Or don't want the version with the current features. So then here's the versions, and then each version has corresponding features. So for example, in this case, we've got feature 1 and feature 2 are in version 1, and feature 1, 2, and 3 are in version 2. And then finally, we've got a table here that shows how much cost and time is required to build each feature. So the thing that's interesting about this is we can take all the values in the version 1 column and we can actually make a histogram of them and conceptually aggregated over all 7 billion people. We can have this sort of conceptual diagram which says how much would people pay for it if we could figure out the maximum amount they could pay. And from this histogram over here, we can also compute roughly, how much we would get with so-called perfect segmentation. That is to say, these people, there's 100,000 people, it's a log scale over here. There's 100,000 people who will pay 1,000, and there's 10,000 people who will pay 1,100, and 10,000 people will pay 1,200, and then 1,000 people will pay 1,300, and so on. If we were able to charge the absolute maximum price that each person could pay, that is to say perfect segmentation, this is how much revenue we'd make. If we only charge $1,000, then in that case, the amount that you'd get would be 128 million in this case, because you're now charging, even though there's 1,000 people that would pay up to $2,000, you're rounding it off to just 1,000 for version 1. And in general, you're going to want to have to do this for all kinds of reasons, one of which is you're probably not going to be able to get the reserve price all that granularly. However, conceptually, this is very useful, and you might immediately retort, and one last point is, okay, so maybe maximum you'll make $128 million. Is this greater than the cost of V1's features? So V1, as you recall, had feature 1 and feature 2, and they cost $1 million and $50,000 and took, 50 to 100 days to build, or 50 days and 100 days respectively. So it's going to cost you $100, 100 days, and like about $1 million, and $50,000 to actually build out V1, and hopefully you'll get 2%, 3% of the market, and you'll make that money back. And so this is the conceptual thing that you should keep running through. Now, of course, there's immediate limitations. You're not going to be able to poll all 7 billion people. True. But what you can do is you can survey a subset of them. And even doing something very, very rudimentary, like going and getting a poll of your 20 closest friends and asking them about different versions, you're going to find that you're going to learn things about your product, that people are going to value certain things that you thought were unimportant, and conversely not value things that you thought were important, that you wouldn't be able to figure out just in an armchair. So this is kind of a conceptual framework for setting product tiers. Once you kind of think of there being a market, then exactly, how do you attack it and what features do you build in which order? Importantly, if you find that, say, version 2 or version 3 are actually really compelling, you might decide to push some of these features up earlier. So for example, if people would actually buy version 2, that there's a steep jump over here, maybe you decide to push feature 3 into version 1 instead, right? And maybe delay some other feature and push it back. So it's also a conceptual framework for thinking about feature prioritization. And this is the kind of thing that a product manager will want to do and have be second nature.